Hello, my name is Kim Knights. I work at Suffolk County Council and I am the Head of Business Management working in adult social care. We are recording a series of short films where I will be chatting with people who also work in adult social care in Suffolk as part of our iCare campaign. I will be asking them about their career, the support that they have had from the council and why they chose the career they did, and what they enjoy about their job and the work that they do. I really hope that through these films you will learn a little bit about the wide range of roles available. I also hope that you will find inspiration in these films to consider whether a career in care would be right for you. For more information about working in adult social care here in Suffolk, please visit our website www.careers.suffolk.gov.uk/services and click on adult social care. Hello Amanda, welcome.
Hello, Kim.
Would you like to tell everyone your name and your job title and where you work?
So my name's Amanda Takavarasha. I'm the Principal Social Worker for Adults in Suffolk and Quality Assurance and Practice Development Team Manager. So I work within adult social care. I manage the quality assurance team.
Thank you. And tell me, what is a Principal Social Worker?
Principal Social Worker is a strategic role that is required by the Care Act for each local authority to have a strategic lead for the social work profession. And I'm expected to ensure excellent social work practice, ensure that our social workers are happy within their jobs, but ultimately to ensure best outcomes for people through our practice as social workers.
What does a social worker do?
Well, so social workers do all sorts of things, and from an adult social care perspective, what a social worker does is very frequently to do with what the Care Act duties expect of us, which is, for example, undertaking assessments of people's needs or reviewing people's needs, but also, the tasks such as care and support planning. But ultimately, the whole purpose of social work is to ensure social justice, is to ensure that people who are oppressed have a better experience in life and to unblock some of those things that lead them to feeling that way. It's also about when people are going through specific circumstances that might give rise to care and support needs or to difficulties in their lives, we're there to support them through that, not to take over, not to do things for people, but to enable them to identify the strengths within their own life that they can they can harness in order to make positive change in their own lives.
That sounds like a lot of responsibility.
It is, but I absolutely love it.
Yeah.
So I really love it, and particularly around giving advice to people around what social work is, around our legislation, our primary requirements within the Care Act. So it's quite enjoyable.
How did you get into the role?
I got into the role after several years working within social work in Suffolk County Council, and initially I transitioned through several roles. I've worked in Suffolk for a very long time, for most of my career, and started off as a qualified social worker doing frontline social work, and made my way through various roles into being a principal social worker over time.
So when you were young girl at school, did you think you wanted to get into care? Did you know you wanted to be a social worker? How did your journey take off?
Well, I wish I had a much more inspiring story about how I landed into social work. Most people have a fantastic story about how it became a vocation to them from a very young age, how they wanted to go into social work. I had no idea whatsoever what I wanted to do would be, and the earliest memory I have of talking about what I wanted to do in life is when I was about 9 years old. And we were asked at school what we wanted to be, and most people wanted to be a doctor, a lawyer, all the obvious things.
Yeah.
And I remember saying, well, I want to be a mum.
That's lovely.
And I thought that, well, I can't think of anything else. I want to be a mum. And, I had dolls at that time, so it seemed like quite a fun thing to do. Ironically, I think that is my primary function, as I really enjoy being a mum, and being a social worker and working for Suffolk County Council enables me the flexibility I need to do that job really well. I got into social work accidentally. It wasn't intentional at all, and it was due to my mum wanting me to apply for anything at some point, just do something, please. I was 18 years old and I thought, well, I have no idea. So my cousin said, why don't you do social care? And I thought, yeah, all right, that's fine. And it took me probably up till my second year of social work to really fall in love with the profession when I went on to placement and really started to work with people. And the reality of seeing what social work can do to improve people's lives absolutely captivated me. And I think had that not happened, I probably would have finished my degree and gone into something else. But working with people really did it for me.
And it's interesting you say that at 9 years old, you know, you want to be a mum.
Yeah.
And actually, you know, a lot of what a social worker does is supporting people,
Absolutely.
you know, bringing that kindness, you know, all of those things that a mum would do. So then maybe there was something already starting
That's a good point.
to work away there.
That's a really good point. I think it's that inbuilt desire to care, I suppose. And I never thought of it that way, but you're absolutely right. I think in wanting to be a mum and to nurture.
That's it, isn't it?
Absolutely, yes. But I think with being a social worker, I want to ensure that I do my best to work alongside people and to ensure independence, etc. Which, in many ways, there are many parallels to being a parent as well. But
definitely.
Yeah.
So when you started, obviously you'd had a lot of training to become a social worker and to get your qualification and your degree and all of those things. What about when you started the job? What kind of training did you get?
So I think there's so many opportunities in terms of what to do. The induction process itself in Suffolk is really strong and really robust and supportive. I undertook training such as, that was before the Care Act, so I learnt about the Community Care Act, and I learnt about the Mental Capacity Act, which came in just as I qualified. So that was quite interesting, actually. Lots of training around safeguarding, around just how to work with people in reality, and the placements that I did were really helpful. One of the things that I found most useful in my career is the ability to progress with continuous professional development, including a paid-for masters within social work as well, which is something that's quite helpful from a working for Suffolk County Council. We have that funded for us if that's something you're interested in. So I took that opportunity, so there's so many opportunities in terms of training, and I absolutely managed to take whatever was thrown at me, because I think inside I'm quite a geek, and I love training, I love learning, I love finding out new things, and so just loads of opportunities.
And you mentioned there you became a team manager in adult safeguarding.
I did, yes.
So was that after you're a social worker?
I was a social worker, and then I became a senior practitioner.
Right.
And when I was a senior practitioner, my role at the time was mainly to look at all the incoming safeguarding inquiries and concerns, and to do that initial decision making. So that was prior to us having a multi-agency safeguarding hub. And after that, I then became a safeguarding manager, which was really enjoyable. One of the best jobs I've done. I was really passionate at the time about safeguarding, still am. And I then moved into a team manager role within a generic social care team, which includes occupational therapists as well, who we work quite closely with as a profession. And independence and wellbeing practitioners as well, who are non-registered social care staff. And I went from that team manager role into a role as an operations and partnerships manager within social care. So I supported with, alongside the head of operations and partnerships, overseeing social care teams and supporting them within that role. So becoming a principal social worker, the role came up, and I saw it and I applied for it because my role as operations and partnerships manager was temporary. So this was an opportunity that came up, and absolutely thoroughly enjoying it so far.
Good. And I know you're enjoying it, so we're not asking you to sort of go. But have you had any thoughts about what you would do next?
I don't, not entirely. I think at the moment I'm 2 years into this role, and there are several things I think that I would still like to do in terms of my role. So principal social worker roles vary so widely from one local authority to another, they tend to be hybrid roles in that, as well as your statutory role as a
Yeah.
principal social worker, you may also have different functions. And for me in Suffolk, that is to oversee quality assurance, which I also enjoy. So it's almost like two separate roles, but they do come together.
Yeah.
And I'm now seeing through the implementation of our new quality assurance framework,
Yeah.
which I think there are so many things I would like to see through first before I move on to my next role.
I understand that. And you've mentioned, the quality assurance part of your job. To somebody listening to this that might not know much about adult social care, what is it you're trying to get better? What's the outcomes you're looking for there?
Yeah. So the main thing I think is to think of it from a person's perspective.
Yeah.
So the key thing is about people's experience. So social work is something that we do, that we enjoy, but ultimately the purpose of being a social worker is to work with people, is to improve people's lives, and is to make sure that people have the opportunity to live a normal life.
Yeah.
When we become involved in people's lives, unfortunately, that's when they're going through very often either a crisis or going through a difficult time in one way or another. And what we want to do from a quality assurance perspective is to make sure that our involvement, our interventions, the relationships that we build with people, that all of that is positive.
Yeah.
And that the outcomes for people are the best they can be. So the people are central to that process and to everything that we do, and making sure that we can prove that that's what we're doing and to hold ourselves to account. But it's also about celebrating good practice. So when we come across something that's been done really well, it's about sharing that learning and making sure that we do more of it.
Yeah.
If we come across something that we haven't done so well, we learn from that and we progress.
Really important.
Yeah. So we just make sure we're constantly striving to do better. And that's what quality assurance is about.
Brilliant, thank you. You said like when you were 18 and you were looking like what you're going to do next. What would you say to the 18-year-olds out there now about coming into work in adult social care? 'Cause it's a vast sector, isn't it? What advice would you give?
I think one of the main things I would say is that, I think I've spoken passionately about how brilliant it is to work with people and how rewarding that is.
Yeah.
But one of the things that I found really great working in adult social care is the people I work with, my colleagues, and the relationships that I've built with my colleagues.
Yeah.
I think that's one of the best things, after how rewarding it is to work with people with care and support needs. I think my relationships with my colleagues and the friendships I've developed. I've worked in Suffolk for 16 years now, and I don't see myself going anywhere else. So I would say it is challenging in many ways. Being a social worker is about intervening in people's lives at sometimes the most challenging times, but it's so fun. Even the things that have happened that have initially appeared to be an adversity, with time, that's what builds us. And I would say with resilience, with, just if you have a passion for working with people, being in social care, being a social worker, or any other profession like being an occupational therapist is absolutely rewarding for multiple reasons.
And you mentioned that when you started, there was the change between the Community Care Act and the Care Act.
And the Care Act, yes.
What other changes have you seen since you've been here?
In terms of legislation, there was also the introduction of the Mental Capacity Act, which was really good to go from a time where decision making on behalf of people with people wasn't very structured in the way that it is now. And what the Mental Capacity Act brings to us is that structured way of ensuring that people's human rights and their we're supporting people to make decisions for themselves. So that's brilliant. But I've also seen the emergence and strengthening of strengths-based practice within social work, relationship-based practice, and more recently, more is happening from a digital perspective in terms of how we support people, but also how we work. With the pandemic, obviously having a real impact there in widening our approaches to working with people and being less intrusive in how we approach our visits to people, whereas now we can speak to people on the screen.
It's great,
preferable. A lot has changed in that respect as well.
Going back to that 18-year-old that might want to get into this, If you were asked, if somebody was saying they wanted to come and work for us, what kind of skills and experience should that type of person have?
I would say that being in social care, it's absolutely paramount that you are skilled in good communication.
Yeah.
Or that you have the desire to learn.
Yeah.
Because I remember first being asked to answer the phone when I was on induction, and I absolutely panicked. I thought, what am I going to say? I
Yeah.
can't talk on the phone. But it comes with time, so don't worry if you haven't
Yeah.
built those skills yet. I would also say that you should be absolutely passionate about supporting people. So it's not about helping people, but I think it's about enabling people to help themselves, and being creative is really
Yeah.
helpful. But yeah, I think it's mainly just about people.
Yeah.
You know, if you love working with people in one way or another, social
Yeah.
care is absolutely for
Yeah.
you.
And as a principal social worker, what does an average day look to you like now?
Oh, it's quite varied. So an average day to me is much less predictable than it was when I was a frontline social worker. So even then it wasn't very predictable. But when I worked on the front line, I generally would meet with people, I would undertake assessments, I would undertake reviews, I would get to know people. And as you progress within your career, depending on what role you're in, it changes somewhat, which is the beauty of it. You know,
Yeah.
you can go into all sorts of different roles as a social worker. And as a principal social worker, I am in many more meetings than I was as a frontline social worker. I also work with my team. I've got a team of 7 of us in total, and we develop policies, for example. We undertake audits to ensure that the recording that we undertake for people's our how we work with people is up to scratch, and it could look very different from day to day.
Yeah.
One of the things I enjoy the most is spending time with our newly qualified social workers, getting to see what it's like for them in practice, spending time with our practitioners, meeting people with care and support needs as well, and finding out from them what sort of impact we're making on their lives, whether it's good or bad,
Yeah.
and learning from that. So I think just spending time with people is very often what I do day to day, and taking action, whatever that might be.
Sounds like a great role.
It's very enjoyable. It's always very difficult to describe when
Yeah.
people ask me
Yeah.
what a principal social worker does, because it varies quite a lot, which is what works for me, I think.
And from that conversation you had with your mum all them years ago, and she said, just go get a job.
Yeah.
Do you think she's proud of what you've done? And are you glad you got into social work?
She's very proud,
Yeah,
and yeah,
I
she's
bet she
very
is.
proud of what I do and what I've done. My mum worked with people too in her
Yeah.
career. She worked for the NHS, so for me to work in adult social care, she's very proud, and yeah, I think she sees that all those worries hopefully have paid
Yeah.
off in her nudges.
Yes,
etc.
gentle motherly
Her
nudges.
gentle nudges. It's gentle as a sledgehammer, but here I am. So yeah.
And sometimes you hear in the press and media, and social workers sometimes get a bit of a bad rap, don't they? How does a social worker deal with that in their day to day?
I think the first thing is about understanding where does that come from, and not being defensive, because people will rightly have had some kind of experience that makes them feel that way. So the first thing we've got to do is to understand that and not to become defensive. And the next thing is to sort of see what we can do about that. And there's lots we can do about it. As a principal social worker, we often meet as nationally as principal social workers. There's one for each local authority, and we often talk about this because we are so mindful that a lot of our efforts are sometimes undermined, for example, within the media, within how we're portrayed in dramas even, or in soap operas. So we have, for example, spoken to the Department of Health and Social Care via our chief social worker to try and find out how we can influence that to improve the way we're portrayed in the media. And on a local scale, we can try and understand what experiences people have had that have given rise to those feelings and to them saying that, and hopefully work with them collaboratively. So the main thing is just understanding, I think.
And I guess that links into what you were saying earlier about your quality assurance as well.
Yes,
You know, keeping people at the centre of everything that you're doing.
Absolutely. And, you know, one of our ambitions as adult social care in Suffolk is to put people's voices at the heart of care. And unfortunately, or fortunately, sometimes people's voices are expressing things that are uncomfortable for us to hear. But we need to sit in that discomfort, learn from that, understand where that's coming from, and we need to do better when we need to do better. Sometimes we also need to reinforce and to understand people, to support people to understand why we have to make certain decisions or why we have to do certain things. So I'm under no illusions that we will always have situations where people are not entirely happy with what we've done, but we need to try our best to work with them and to understand them, but also support them to understand what we do and why we do it.
And you mentioned earlier about having that resilience.
Yes,
does that
absolutely.
help in that
Oh,
role?
absolutely. That is crucial. Having resilience is absolutely crucial. There are experiences as a social worker that, like that, you know, hearing from somebody who's not very happy with you, you just have to be resilient and you have to work your way through that and see, you know, the lighter side of it at the end of the day. So, but I think it's just about learning and working with people and staying resilient and understanding that very often that sort of, you know, incident comes from somewhere that is valid. You know, those feelings are valid.
If somebody's sitting at home watching this, Amanda, thinking, I could be a social worker, what advice would you give them? How could they do it? What would be their first steps?
There are various ways that people could come into social work. So sometimes people come into it straight from school. They go into this, you know, do a social work degree, which is a traditional way. We also have options for people to undertake an apprenticeship, so which is a fully funded option. And while you're undertaking your apprenticeship, you are paid as well to do that. It takes 4 years, and after that, hopefully, if you're successful, you become a social worker. We also have different options such as return to social work, but that's for people who've already been in the profession and want to come back to it, and a graduate trainee program for people who've done something else and perhaps they've watched this and thought, I might want to switch into social work. They can undertake a graduate trainee program and come into social work. If you're not sure and you think you just want to find out more about it, there is so much available online. There is a lot available on our website as well about social work. So have a look and think about it.
That's fantastic. Thank you.